make this more identifiable and unique will be our arts program. And CATS has a arts program with all of our major projects where we reserve a percent of our funding for construction and design into an art program. We've hired an artist named Christopher Weed, who has developed some art concepts for our station that you see here. And so those will include each of these will all be on the station platform itself. And since the platforms are kind of apart from each other a little bit, we will have a theme of gears, which is mainly what we're showing here on one platform, and spools of thread on the other. And that is to kind of harken back to the history of this area, which was very industrial and textile oriented. And so that's where our artist has gotten inspiration for the art in here. And some of these are conceptual. The exact art will change a bit as we turn it into from pictures into actual designs. But we'll have specialty art benches here, as you see, with the gears, and those will be located on the station platform. We'll have decorative designs in the windscreen glass and column covers that are brightly colored with designs and text in them. And we'll also have some finials. That's these gears sticking up from the top of the canopies here. And those are just to give the station some more color, to make it more identifiable. One of the things that we've heard and that we noticed is that it's difficult to see the station sometimes from farther away because of all the large buildings that kind of screen it from South Boulevard, from Hawkins Street. So we're trying to give the station a little bit more visibility from further out so that people can find it and identify it easily. So when we go to construction on this project, there's going to be two different construction packages. There's going to be a track and systems package that creates and constructs all of the hardware and the things that you don't see that allow the station to function and communicate and the trains to operate with the rest of the system. And that actually is by far the larger of the two packages. The second package will be a separate contract for the construction of the station platforms, and all the elements that go on them, as well as the rail trail. And that will come later. But what you'll see first will be this track and systems package. And we have already hired a construction manager at risk, we call that a CMAR. It's kind of a wonky term, but it just means that we've hired our contractor early so that they can help us plan construction while we're still doing design. They can help us look at what we're designing and make sure that we are building something that we've thought through all the details on. So this contractor, Stacy and Whitbeck, they are a contractor out of California that has built, one of the few contractors that's built light rail stations on active alignments. It's really not that common to add stations like we're doing here. And so they've got some experience that we're tapping into as to how to do this. They have some staff that already know our system well as well, and we are already working with them. So their work will include building this track crossover so that we can use that during later construction. It will include site preparation behind the auto bell so that we can get all of that down to grade so that we can use that area behind auto bell to stage construction materials and equipment. And we will use the rail trail between auto bell and the Publix, where the first station platform is. That will be construction access until we get that station platform built. And while we're doing this, as you see in the picture on the bottom here, we'll be installing duct banks. We have to move the main communications lines that serve the entire blue line, move them out of the way so that we can have space for our station platforms. We'll get them behind the platform and underneath the future rail trail. And we also have to put in here in the bottom here, the blue and purple box and green box we'll be putting in station cabinets that basically have the controls for the station platform, along with a backup generator in case power goes down. And that will all be kind of less visible. That's this picture right here. It's next to a building where we have a substation that powers the light rail, kind of near Publix. So all of that will be happening as the first stage of construction. There also will be overhead catenary poles that will be relocated and some new poles that will be added for this track crossover. And that's just the metal poles that hold the power lines for our system. And so all of that has some of the more meaningful impacts to rail operations, because a lot of that work is right up near the tracks. The rail is right between the tracks. And so we'll be working and doing some of that work during regular weekend shutdowns. We'll be doing some of that work at night when it's not too noisy, and we'll be planning all of that out as we work with our construction manager. So a year ago, we had a public meeting in late August, and with that we had a public survey that we posted online, and we left that up for a while to get as much feedback from you all as we could get. And we got a great result from that. As you can see here, we had 448 participants, which I consider very successful. Lots of comments, pages of comments, and we were able to understand better the public priorities for this project. And so I want to address some of those and how the feedback we got from this survey, how that figures into the project, because that is really important. It's helpful for us to know what people are most concerned about, both so that we can talk about it and also so that we can address it. So thank you to everyone who responded to that survey. And as you can see from this first question, we got a range of a lot of people who use the light rail, the blue line, either very often or not often at all. And so we got feedback from all sorts of folks, and that's much appreciated. So two of the main questions I really focused on, I want to talk about here today, are priorities for the project. So we asked you all to rank the following design considerations, and all of these design considerations are very important to the project. We're considering all of them, but by far the number one answer was access to the station from South Boulevard and Hawkins Street. And then the other question we asked was to rank the construction considerations, what's important during construction. And what we heard, by far the number one answer, was rail trail access during construction. We also got lots of comments, as I mentioned, and a lot of those comments, by far the overwhelming number one comment that we got back, had to do with opening the pedestrian crossing to allow people to get across the tracks as soon as possible. So access and pedestrian issues was by far the biggest issue that we heard. And so I want to go over that with a lot of the rest of this presentation. So the first thing that we heard seems to be the number one priority is the track crossing. And what you see on this picture on the left is a crossing at East-West Station. This is up at East Boulevard. And so what we mean by a track crossing are these they're precast concrete slabs, rectangles that fit within the existing track. So the crossing has to be at the elevation of the track, and these are kind of standard dimension crossing pads. So we'll probably make ours double wide, so there'll be two sets of these. And you will see that crossing will be just past where the exclamation mark is. And also just past this retaining wall you see here that's holding up our substation. So right behind the Publix on one side and behind Cortland South End Apartments on the other, or a little bit behind where this gentleman is standing here. And we are studying how to best get that crossing in. We understand it's the top priority of the public, and we want that to be open as soon as we can safely do it. It will also help with convenience, both for people trying to get to Publix, trying to get to Atherton and all the other destinations on the South Boulevard side, as well as Sycamore Brewing, lots of apartments, complexes and other things going on the Hawkins side. But will also help with during construction with our contractors being able to get materials across the tracks as well. So that's a top priority, but we want to make sure we do it safely. The safest thing would be to only open that up after we had already finished the station so that the trains would be automatically stopping at the station. But we think we can still do this safely during construction, have this opened up and be useful to everyone. But we're going to be studying that during the rest of design, and we have a safety consultant that is advising us as well as our own safety personnel. And we will get that installed as part of this early work that our Stacy Whitbeck, our construction manager, is going to be constructing. So also a very important part of this project is the rail trail. As you can see here on the bottom left corner where the scooters are parked, that the rail trail ends just at the end of Camden South Line Apartments, just as the property just behind Auto Bell. And it picks up again then on the next property to the south. So we are going to, early on in construction, strip out the vegetation and grade this down to make it flat with the existing rail trail on both sides. You can see all of this here in the middle picture. And build this out initially as a construction access, because our contractor will be working from this property. It's basically the only land available to them that has any kind of depth to it in this area. And we'll be accessing this through Publix on one side and we intend to access it through Cannon Pharmacy and the property behind Auto Bell on the other side. We'll keep working and meeting with those properties to make sure that we do this in a way that is minimally disruptive to their businesses and also to the rail trail. But there will be some times when we are using this for construction or it's not safe to use this also for the general public. But by installing this track crossing here in the middle, that will allow us to allow for better access during construction to the overall rail trail throughout the system. We also are reconstructing the rail trail adjacent to the station platforms. We will build that at the same elevation as the stations. The stations, of course, their elevation is fixed by the existing train rails. And so that, in some places, that means the rail trail will either be mainly rising a little bit. And so then we have to tie it back into the existing rail trail. So that kind of determines how far back our construction goes, how much of the rail trail beyond the station platforms we need to reconstruct. So that is the yellow you see in these two pictures here. And we will be developing, along with our contractor, and planning out detailed plans both for rail operations during construction. At times we'll be running trains on one track and using this crossover to allow the trains to run on one side of the rail or the other while we do construction on the other. We'll do the same. We'll have the same thing. We'll have a plan for when we close different segments of the rail trail and do our best to try to keep access on at least one side or the other open whenever possible. And we will have more details for that as we study that further. But those are important project goals as we plan out this construction with our contractor. Also, we are looking at connections and how people will get to the station, not just from the rail trail, but also from side streets, from South Boulevard, as you see here on the left, and Hawkins Street on the right. And we want to construct better, wider, more direct sidewalks through the properties. There's no public streets that connect directly to the station. So we're setting up meetings. We've had some meetings with some of the properties, and we're setting up ones with a couple that we haven't met with yet, and tackling these issues and looking at each individual property with each business or property owner. And so the idea is to widen out these sidewalks, to also look at crosswalks in the case on the public side, and look at how we can improve on those crosswalks, make it a more comfortable, safer, more attractive pedestrian experience, and also easy for people to find and to be able to know where to best access our station, how to get in and out. And the same thing on the Hawkins Street side. We've met with Cortland South End and worked with them, and we are looking at widening out this sidewalk here between the rail trail and Hawkins Street. And we also, because we are raising the rail trail so that it will connect with up here with our track crossing, that causes this sidewalk also to rise up near on the rail trail end. And so we'll be looking at that as well, and designing that to tie in with the entrances coming in from the apartments, as well as the parking lot adjacent to it. All of that is a little bit hazier than understanding exactly what we need to do when constructing the station, but we'll be looking at that over the next few months and nailing that down. And now I also want to explain just overall the progress of this project, what we've done to get here, and what we will be doing between now and when we open for service. So we've been working on this for about 2 years now. Our first year was primarily a planning study where we studied the area, we studied what each of the properties, what was there, and created a layout and the exact location for the station platforms, and also looked at the rail trail and determined what we could do with that. So after that, and actually during that, we also were doing a NEPA, which is a federal National Environmental Protection Agency study, which is required in order for us to lock in our funding. And just briefly, our funding, we're fully funded through construction. We're using contingency money that was not spent on the Blue Line extension, that was left over or unspent. And so that's a mix of local and federal dollars. But we still had to go through this environmental process to demonstrate that our project would not have undue negative impacts on anyone in the area, and that it was a project that would serve the community well. So we've gotten that approval from the federal government, from the FTA. And we also went through and studied the project more to see how it affected our system. A big part of that was deciding to construct and to include that track crossover in the project. And we looked at how construction would affect the overall operations of the Blue Line. And we've determined that by constructing this crossover, we're going to be able to run trains 15 minutes apart during construction, which is how we run trains today. Ideally, we'd like to run them at maybe 10-minute headways, but 15 minutes will be the best that can be done with the crossover when we are running trains on one track. And that will be when we are constructing the platforms. We'll construct the platforms on one side, on the public side first, probably, and then we'll flip the trains over to the other side, and we'll work on the other side of the tracks on the Hawkins Street side. So 15 minutes, that will allow us to maintain operations the same as we do today during construction of this station. Our design, we are about halfway through design. There's 3 stages of design on this project, and we are near the end of the second one. We're preparing to review plans that our designer will be submitting. That's coming out in 2 stages, just as construction will come out. So we're preparing to review those track and systems plans, and we've hired Stacy and Whitbeck to be our construction manager. Kimberly Horn is the lead for our design team, and we are working with both of those to complete the design and review those plans at this time. And as we get through that, then we will be negotiating a construction contract with Stacy and Whitbeck. And at the same time, we'll be looking at some of the key items and risk factors that we have for construction. So what really drives our construction schedule, and really want to explain why this project takes the amount of time it does, is that there's a lot of specialty materials that are needed that require a fairly long lead time. And so we are prioritizing getting those ready so that we can order them. Our construction manager is identifying exactly what requires those long lead times. Some of that includes some of the specialty rail that we need for the crossover, some of the electronic and microprocessor equipment that communicates with the rest of the system. And so some of those things can take a year or more to acquire. So we are pushing that really quickly and working on identifying and authorizing our contractor to order those materials. The other thing is the real estate process. There are a lot of steps baked into that to make sure that we are treating all of the businesses and the properties fairly in this area, as well as that we are spending the right amount of money for real estate. And generally for this project, almost all of what we need is temporary. It's just a little bit of space for construction to build the stations, to build the rail trail, and then access, because there's no public streets. Almost all of our access is either through the tracks. In some cases, we can use the tracks for access or the rail trail, but also through some of the businesses that have drive aisles like Publix and others that connect to the rail trail. So we're having meetings right now with each of those properties and preparing to work through that process in 2025 at the same time that we're finishing the design and acquiring those materials and planning for construction. And then in 2026, we will begin construction. We'll build all those tracking systems elements, duct banks, and all of that, and open up the pedestrian crossing across the tracks. And then that will advertise and bid out a separate contract for a contractor to build the stations. And the stations are a little less complicated in that we understand, and there's local contractors that can do that type of work. It's very similar to work that we've done on the Blue Line extension and on the Blue Line when we built those stations. So that's actually the simpler of the two packages to construct. But still, the challenges there are that there's still not a lot of room to work. We're still closely looking at how we balance the contractor's needs with the public's needs to have access through the area and on the rail trail, and also that we have minimal disruption to the people that live in the area, work in the area, and the businesses in the area. And we anticipate that construction will wrap up in 2027 or maybe early 2028. And then in 2028, we will test all of the systems and the station and make sure that everything is communicating and functioning properly with the rest of our system, make sure everything's safe and ready to go so that we can open revenue service in 2028 to the public and complete the project. So thank you for listening to all of that presentation. I'd like to open it up to any questions that have come in or that you would like to ask about anything that I've said today.
Thanks so much, Todd. That was a great presentation. And at this time, we don't have any questions in the chat, but I'd like to give people a couple of minutes, see if anything comes in. But while we're waiting, I'll just remind everyone, if you have any questions after this meeting, you can email southendstation@publicinput.com, and that's also in the chat. And then in the chat, I also linked our project website. So those are two resources that you can use to find out more after this meeting if you're still curious. But I'll give people just a couple minutes to put any questions in that live chat.
Great. And also, yeah, I just really appreciate that, Natalie. And we just encourage anyone who listens to this as a recording too, that we really do take those questions that we get seriously, and you will get a response if you send us a question.
Absolutely. It's a good point. We do have a question about the timeline. If you want to go over that one more time.
Sure. So, yes, so this is a project that, like I said earlier, we've gone through a couple of years of going through the planning, the environmental phase, the early design. And so right now, we're continuing that real estate, that construction planning process. We've identified all the different types of risks to the project that could cause it to either become more expensive or for that schedule to push out. And we're trying to really tackle those hard right now. And so that is what we are going to be focused on in the next year. That's why we're having these meetings right now. It's our best opportunity right now to still be flexible on the design based on any comments that we get. But once we'll be then in the next year finishing that design, planning construction, acquiring materials, beginning real estate, doing all the safety studies that are needed to make sure that we have all the safety elements to this project that are needed. There's a lot going on in the next year. And then also as part of that, working out a negotiated construction contract with our construction manager at risk to begin the track crossover work, and all of the duct bank work, all of that will be happening in 2026. Also some site preparation there in the area behind Autobell. And so that contractor will be working, we anticipate through most of 2026, maybe into early 2027. And then they'll still be around, but they will take a pause while the station contractor comes in and they construct in 2027 the station platforms, the rail trail around the station, the rail trail behind Autobell, all of that work. And also drainage up by Tremont, and they install all the different amenities onto the rail trail and connections into the station platform from South Boulevard and Hawkins Street. We anticipate that work taking place primarily in 2027, could extend a little bit into 2028, and then we'll have a testing phase where we test all of that new infrastructure out, make sure everything is working correctly, particularly all the electronics. We have our construction manager come back at risk. We have them come back in and they install and connect to all of the electronics, the audio, all the components that attach to those station platforms and tie them into the rest of our system there in 2028. And we test all of that out, and then when we've confirmed that it's ready, everything's ready to go and operating safely and communicating well with the rest of the system, then sometime in 2028, we will open the station to the public for revenue service. And during all this time, during construction, we're going to have, we'll be providing more detail as we develop it, but we'll have a robust communication system so that everybody can know where to go for updates on what's happening with construction, what's happening with the rail trail, what we're doing, how long we'll be doing it, that sort of thing. And also to be able to reach our team when there are concerns and questions about construction.
Great. Thanks so much, Todd. I have not gotten any more questions in the chat, so I think we're good to end the meeting. But thank you all for watching live if you're here live, and thank you for coming back to watch the recording of this meeting if that's the case for you. But we appreciate any and all comments and questions. Again, southendstation@publicinput.com is a good email address to reach out to, and we will respond. Thanks so much.